Today we're going to deal with the article that emerged in the Panorama newspaper of the 14th of October. That article dealt with a sister and a brother which are in the care of the care agency. We believed in that article, as I've just said in my introduction, that has gross distortions and misrepresentation. But before we deal with that, there is an important issue that I need to raise. And that is that it is just not good enough for the Panorama newspaper to say that they have a right to print a story on the basis that they have the consent of the parent, of the father in this particular case. It is not right because in accordance with the Children's Act, when through a court order, the court order gives the parental responsibility to the care agency, then in accordance with the Children's Act, the Panorama newspaper should have actually come to the care agency in order to try and find out whether we were willing or able to provide answers to particular questions. It is not good enough for the Panorama to justify the content of its article on the basis of saying we have the consent of the father. Of course, the father has a responsibility, but the primordial responsibility under the care order lies with the care agency, and we believe the Panorama newspaper is in breach of the Children's Act. And it's also unfair as well on the father, because most people up and down in life do not know the law. But we would have expected the Panorama that before publishing the contents of its article to have gone to its solicitor and sought out whether what they were doing was legal or not. We also understand that while the father gave his consent, the father was not present when the story was being given for the purpose of this article on the 14th of October. We understand and we would like to know that this particular child, which we call Child A, but the Panorama called it Child Alex, right, had been in the premises of the Panorama with an ex-care worker. It is important for us to know whether this is the case or it isn't the case, because in the past, the care agency, and we don't make a secret of this, we have disciplined and sacked a number of ex-care workers because we have felt that their standard of work was not in accordance with the standard that we maintain in order to provide services to children. We feel it's not good enough for the Panorama newspaper to hide himself under a slogan of saying, we will not reveal who was there out of fear of the government. I think this is a self-serving circular argument in order not to be able to be as accountable as we need to be accountable for the service that we provide in the care agency. In other words, the spotlight should not be just on the care agency, the spotlight should be also on the press. We believe that if we had been living in the UK and we have been providing this service in the UK, we would have had a fair chance of going to the Press Complaint Commission and saying that what the Panorama had done in particular with this particular article is a gross breach of normal standards of journalism. Primarily, there are two main allegations, although there are others as well. One is that the child has been abandoned for 3 years. I'm referring to Child A. And the second one, that we have allowed the child to live in a derelict flat. I will in a minute pass on to Jackie, Mrs. Jacqueline Toff, who is the team leader for families and children, to be able to give you a full account as to why we have not abandoned the child or the other allegations. But before I do that, let me just say that I am amazed to hear an allegation of that sort, that the care agency, while I have been the minister or the chairman of the care agency, have completely abandoned a child in our care for 3 years. The allegation is so untrue, so wild, so outside the the normal sense of propriety that I've had to ask the care agency to actually dig out all the times that we have been providing this child for 3 years. And this is the reason why I have taken the time that I took in providing this record of care. You will see here, since February 2008 to October 2011, that this is just not the case. It is the opposite to what the allegations there. But look at it for yourselves. Look at it for yourselves, and when you look at it for yourself and you see all the entries and when you see all the work that the care agency has done, I just leave it to yourself. All I ask for you to be objective, not to have other agendas. Look at it and then tell us whether we've abandoned this child.
I'm going to deal with the first allegation regarding that Child A was abandoned and left to fend for herself for the previous 3 years. As in any allegation of this seriousness, it is someone in my position really important to review the situation. We've thus commissioned a complete review of this case in light of that. And indeed, we've been working flat out to ensure that the review is objective. This is a confidential document, but everything in orange that you see here is our intervention. But we have summarised it for you. Overall, if we look at 2008 to date, I will summarise the interventions and the care that has been afforded to Child A. There have been 124 social work visits to this young person. A further 16 were planned but failed by the young person herself, so in total 140 were planned, 124 took place. There have been 18 meetings with this department and the school and often with the young person.
Sorry, 124 social work
visits.
Social work visits?
Yes. I mean,
140 planned and 124 materialised.
That's correct, because 16 were found by the young person herself and she wasn't available on that. There have been 18 meetings with schools and including Bleak House. There have been 6 times that we have taken her for medical appointments and arranged them. There have been 9 multi-agency planning meetings. There have been 10 looked after children reviews of her care. 9 multi-agency planning meetings.
Just to do with this person?
Yes, we're just talking about this person since 2008. There have been 10 looked after children reviews. This is where the care plan for the young child's circumstances in care is reviewed. There have been 6 meetings with various family members to discuss elements of the care plan and make sure that the family are fully aware. There have been 5 contacts with other agencies whereby we have raised some concerns, and there have been 2 full updating assessments. Now we hand you the summary document month by month, and within our Walter confidential document, which we obviously can't share with you, is the detail of the very details and the topics discussed. So I would suggest that it's simply not possible to say that over the preceding 3 years this young person has been abandoned or left to fend to herself, because the evidence very much is there to say that she has been supported. In the Panorama article, and I'm quoting, it said that Child B had been allowed to live in a derelict flat, and where recently the 14-year-old younger brother of this child, who's also been in care since a young age, very recently was effectively thrown out of the Tangier View Home for Children in Care because of an incident at the home, that this boy is now squatting in this deserted flat. So that was the allegation. Child B, the decision to move Child B, it's always one taken on balance. Child B was moved from the Tangier Views home to be placed as a looked after child with his father after a series of concerning incidents. It's always a balancing act that we have to place and understand the broader needs of other children and the safety of other children when making these decisions. And this is what took place in the case of Child B. Child B was placed with his father, and father was present at the review planning meeting whereby we sat down with other agencies and went through the placement of this young person, which was going to be for a trial period of 8 weeks. Now, father had formerly quite often stated that he felt he was the best person to maintain and exert some control of this young male. It is the case also that when children first come into our care as young children, risks that may pertain to them at that stage differ with the passage of time. And likewise, parents, the concerns about any parenting also differ and change. So we held a review attended by, as I say, a group of professionals, and we made a plan, agreed and signed by father, I have the signed document here, that he would go to into his care for a period of up to 8 weeks, and that this would be reviewed on a weekly basis. We knew also that this young person would likely be visiting his mother. It's very difficult to control a young person, aged now 15's movements, and so before this took place, in keeping with good practice and mirroring practice in the UK, we instructed a viability assessment of both parents' homes. The viability assessment is what it says. It measures, is it viable for a person to stay somewhere for a short time? Is care afforded going to be appropriate? Is it going to be good enough? The viability assessment was undertaken of both father's home and of mother's home in the knowledge that it was likely that the young person would spend some time there. For me, it's incredulous to use a pejorative like the term squat. I have visited mother's home. It is clean, very clean. It is very nice. It is tidy. There are full utilities, electricity, water, etc. It's homely, it's well furnished. Computer, television, that sort of thing there. We realised the legality of this situation, but it was never the plan, and never part of the plan, that Child B would be placed with his mother at his mother's home because of the legality of the housing situation. However, we still undertook the viability to satisfy ourselves that should he spend some time there, that this was a viable option. The social worker, the very experienced social worker, undertook the viability assessment, and it was later checked by myself and the senior social worker, as well as other involved parties. And I can tell you that this is an entirely appropriate place for a young person to spend some time in. A viability assessment of father's home was also undertaken. And it would be fair to say that there is some work that needs to be achieved if the children were to stay there long term, both of them. For an example, there wasn't a washing machine. This was immediately provided.